Happy Wednesday, everyone. Well, not if you're Whoopi Goldberg, a.k.a. Karen Johnson. Yeah, who knew Whoopi was a Karen? I thought that was only for white people, like Toyota Priuses and skiing. Roll it, Francis.
Good morning and welcome to The View. You all saw the news. Whoopi will be back here in 2 weeks. Okay?
So cute when one of their side gets punished. They sulk like they ran out of raw cookie dough.
Whoopi Goldberg's recent on-air unraveling wasn't just dramatic. It could have been mistaken for a scene straight out of a high-stakes primetime drama, complete with invisible storm clouds and the kind of intense stares that make you shift in your seat. The catalyst? A razor-sharp critique from Greg Gutfeld that sliced through the studio tension like a hot knife through butter. His words landed with such unfiltered force, it was as if her confidence momentarily vanished behind the desk. If you thought daytime, TV had already maxed out its chaos quota, think again. This moment redefined live unpredictability. Picture a reality TV reunion, mid-hurricane, with the emotional dial turned to 11. The energy, electric.
Whoopi for 2 weeks because she said the Holocaust had nothing to do with race. She said this on a show called The View, which makes everything about race. Except now.
The Holocaust isn't about race. No, it's not about race.
It's about a different race.
But it's not about race. It's not about race.
What is it about?
Because it's about man's inhumanity to man.
Yeah, that's heroically stupid. Even for The View.
Goldberg's response wasn't so much a rebuttal as it was a full-blown emotional detour. 1 minute, she was confidently navigating The View's well-worn stage like a seasoned commentator. The next, she was coming undone, faster than a Halloween costume in a commercial laundromat. It was less about defending her point and more about holding herself together under pressure. At the eye of the storm, Greg Gutfeld, the ever-smirking Fox News provocateur with a talent for turning sarcasm into a sharp-edged weapon. With his signature blend of punchline-laced precision and a wink of cynicism, Gutfeld launched a verbal missile that didn't just challenge the show's usual narrative, it punctured right through its ideological bubble, leaving Goldberg visibly shaken and the studio buzzing.
Today on The View, otherwise known as Hell's DMV, Whoopi Goldberg asked how much different are the values of the Trump administration from the Taliban.
We have a leader who has repeatedly demeaned women, right? Wants to defund organizations that benefit women, calling on the media to shut up, specifically wants to give preferential treatment based on religion.
To be fair, no one should have been shocked. Whoopi had been steering toward a moment like this for quite some time. The View, originally imagined as a space for spirited, intelligent dialogue, has slowly morphed into something resembling a televised virtue contest, where panelists compete not with insight, but with ever-heightened moral declarations. At the center of this increasingly theatrical chorus is Goldberg, who often seems to confuse volume with validity, delivering her opinions with such force you'd think sheer decibels could win an argument. So when Greg Gutfeld, with his trademark smirk and verbal sledgehammer, delivered a critique that cut through the noise, it didn't just rattle the studio walls, it echoed outside them. His comments exposed a widening gap between how The View sees itself and how audiences actually receive it, not as fearless commentary, but as a curated echo chamber growing louder and more disconnected by the day. Picture the clash. A panel show powered by raw emotion colliding with a guest who wields satire like a scalpel. The atmosphere was ripe for conflict, and Gutfeld knew exactly how to exploit it. His remarks weren't just witty, they were precision-guided, engineered to pierce the thick fog of self-importance that often hangs over The View. With nothing more than a sly grin and a metaphor sharp enough to draw rhetorical blood, he set off a live, televised identity crisis. Whoopi's reaction? Pure theater. A cocktail of stunned disbelief and bruised pride, as if a sacred creed had been blasphemed rather than simply questioned. Her expression said it all. This wasn't just a disagreement. It was a disruption.
Apparently they're throwing tariffs on manatee meat and bovine semen, which means The View is very unhappy. Oh. Sausage maker Johnsonville is recalling more than 42,000 pounds of pork sausage for possible contamination with plastic fibers. Fortunately, authorities were able to track all 42,000 pounds to a single location in New York City.
Let's be clear, Gutfeld didn't just roast Goldberg. He methodically dismantled her arguments with the precision of a seasoned debater. While Whoopi delivered yet another emotionally charged monologue, echoing the familiar sentiments of her ideological safe zone, Gutfeld calmly pulled at the loose threads of her logic, exposing the contradictions tucked beneath the surface. Rather than counter with facts or substance, Goldberg defaulted to her trademark defense mechanism: escalate emotionally, then pivot to the role of the wronged. It's a familiar act, like a magician reaching for the same dove, hoping the audience won't notice it's the same old trick. Stirring? Yes. Predictable? Entirely. And in the end, the emotional theatrics couldn't quite mask the absence of a solid counterpoint.
All. But who's the dumbest one of all? True, none of them are in Mensa, but who's the most densa? Perhaps it's Sunny who mastered the art of making idiots look smart. Now, The View could ask a mirror who's the dumbest one of all, but there's no way that glass doesn't shatter. So instead, let's check out this clip from Monday's episode of The View when the ladies put their science caps on and discuss the...
On The View, any disruption to the show's intellectual echo chamber is treated less like healthy debate and more like an unwanted glitch in the matrix. A dissenting voice isn't welcomed. It's quietly muted, then ushered off-screen like a party guest who brought the wrong kind of wine. So when Greg Gutfeld metaphorically stepped onto the stage, he didn't just present a different viewpoint. He tossed rhetorical grenades into a set built entirely from emotion and affirmation. His commentary didn't merely offend, it illuminated. And as Whoopi struggled to steady herself beneath the glare of unexpected scrutiny, her expression morphed from stunned disbelief to indignant defiance, finally landing somewhere between dramatic martyr and misunderstood prophet, performing for an audience that wasn't quite sure whether to cheer or cringe.
The rapture is here. Rapture's here, and then also I learned that cicadas are coming.
Cicadas.
Cicadas.
Although I love
for the first time in
Cicadas
like
cicada.
No.
for the first time in many years.
No,
And so-
every 17 years this happens.
well, that's not what I read, but maybe maybe all those things together would maybe lead one to believe that either climate change exists
That's what
or
the
something
point.
is really going on.
returning. Earthquakes are not at the mercy of climate change. It's underground. It can't. I don't think
It happens, and the eclipse, they've known about the eclipse coming because eclipses happen, and they actually can say when these things are going to happen.
Amazing. That's not what I read. The true sign of the apocalypse is someone that dumb has a law degree. Worse, if your name has the word sun in it, there's no excuse for not knowing how an eclipse works. But it's no surprise that Joy is the one who understands science. She's been on the science diet for years.
The truth? Gutfeld didn't have to break a sweat. All he did was hold up a mirror, and the reflection was more revealing than anyone on that set was ready for. What stared back was a show driven less by meaningful insight and more by a carefully curated outrage, where decibels are mistaken for depth and dissenting opinions are treated like foreign invaders. Gutfeld didn't just put Whoopi on the spot. He peeled back the curtain on a production powered by performance, not principle. His satire sliced through the show's sanctimony like a beacon through fog, exposing a panel more rehearsed than reactive. As Goldberg scrambled for a retort, her co-hosts instinctively fell in line, nodding along like background dancers who missed the beat but kept moving anyway.
Austin's obsession with race gets thrown back in her face. Today's video comes to us from sunny Austin. Sounds like a town. We're in sunny Austin. She was on PBS's Finding Your Roots, a show dedicated to researching celebrity ancestry. For context, Sunny is a staunch supporter of reparations and has made a fortune spewing nonsense about white privilege and racial justice. Well, turns out she's not as oppressed as she claims she is. She's actually the descendant of slave owners.
But perhaps the most telling moment wasn't on the stage. It was in the reaction. The audience wasn't buying it. Within minutes, the internet erupted like a glitchy Christmas light display, bright, chaotic, and impossible to ignore. Memes, auto-tuned remixes, dramatic slow-motion edits, social media turned Whoopi's unraveling into a digital spectacle. And this wasn't some isolated incident. It was just the latest entry in an ongoing pattern where Goldberg's ironclad declarations consistently collide with public pushback. Each time, her reaction is the same, as if disagreement is a personal attack rather than part of the discourse she once championed. It's a brand of unwavering certainty that seems impervious to feedback, anchored more in ego than evidence. The View, once envisioned as a stage for spirited dialogue, now often resembles a stylishly catered book club where no one's actually read the material, but everyone's ready with a dramatic soliloquy just the same.
Whoopi claims Biden's loose bowels should make voters throw in the towels. Goldberg's rational so weak she doesn't care if Biden can't speak. Yes, it's a magical land where little Debbies make big bellies and brain cells go to die. This week on The View, Whoopi doubled down on her support of Joe Biden's re-election. No surprise, but it was her peculiar poo-powered prose that piqued my potty predilection. Roll it!
I don't care if he's pooped his pants. I don't care if he can't put a sentence.
Meanwhile, Gutfeld left the segment with the effortless swagger of someone who just aced a pop quiz without even sharpening his pencil. There was no chest thumping, no smug victory lap, just a casual shrug, a well-timed quip, and a smooth return to his comfort zone, turning satire into precision-guided commentary. And that's exactly what made it sting. While Whoopi responded with theatrical flair, mistaking emotion for evidence, Gutfeld remained rooted in something increasingly scarce in televised debates, plain old common sense. His calm dismantling wasn't loud, but it echoed. By the time the dust settled, Goldberg didn't resemble the composed, all-knowing host we're used to seeing. Instead, she looked briefly rattled, like someone who had just glimpsed the possibility that their certainties might not be so certain after all.
If he his pants, and in fact, she'll stand right behind him. Not only does she have a terrible case of Trump derangement, she also has no sense of smell or a really weird fetish. And I'm not one to kink shame, to each his own. I guess you just got tired of Joy's crap. Kat, you know what was the most interesting thing about this was the audience reaction. Like when she started talking about poop being everywhere, the audience was like frozen. They were like, oh, I don't, what is going on here? Whoopi has a poop problem.
What does she mean she has poopy days?
She has poop.
But rest assured, by the very next episode, the moment had all but vanished. Any hint of self-reflection was swiftly replaced by a fresh wave of righteous indignation and yet another emotionally charged monologue. That's the cycle that keeps The View spinning, not growth, not evolution, but repetition dressed up as revelation. Each emotional misstep is rebranded as profound commentary. Every pointed critique is reframed as a moral affront, not just to Whoopi, but to decency itself. Even when she stumbles, she manages to pivot seamlessly into a TED Talk on emotional truth. Meanwhile, Gutfeld, armed with nothing more than a few punchlines, manages to cut through the noise with more clarity than a table full of personalities, all competing to outshout each other, like caffeinated parrots trapped in a wind tunnel. His secret weapon? Not provocation, not politics.
These studies are married white women, and they do fall in line with what their husbands are doing.
People have to wonder, where does Sunny Hostin get her opinions? Yeah. Like you said, it's obviously from her husband. She has to tell her what to say in The View, because without it, she's got nothing up there. She's not very bright. So, but the problem with her is that she went full. It makes Sunny Hostin, who thinks climate change caused the solar eclipse, the dumbest of them all. Because everyone knows the moon caused the eclipse, which is controlled by The View's gravitational pull. All right, Kat, did you ever see such a group? It's amazing how Joy and Whoopi became the smart ones.
For me, the most shocking thing about the conversation was how truly boring it was.
Every critique is swiftly spun into a moral crusade, and Whoopi, even in a rare moment of faltering, turns her stumble into a full-on TED Talk about feelings. By contrast, Gutfeld, he simply tells jokes. And yet, with far fewer words, he somehow manages to sound more coherent than a panel of personalities screaming over each other like hyperactive parrots in a wind tunnel. His secret? It's not politics, not provocation. It's laughter, the kind that cuts through the chaos and brings clarity where there's only noise.